Breaking news, your news leader is following now. We're learning more about an FBI search party at a home associated with Memphis rapper Pooh Shiesty.
The feds just uncovered brand new evidence tied to Pooh Shiesty's alleged murders. And nah, we're not talking about the Gucci Mane drama. Not the Dallas kidnapping case either. We're talking about real homicide investigations. The type with no statute of limitations. The type Memphis detectives have reportedly been sitting on for years, waiting for the perfect time to connect everything to a federal case. And according to reports, that time might be now. Pooh Shiesty hopped on Instagram Live with zero filter and basically told the world that Boosie Badazz might be the only rapper alive with more bodies than him. Not Lil Durk. Not NBA Youngboy. Not 21 Savage. Boosie. The same man Louisiana prosecutors once tried to put on death row over alleged murder-for-hire accusations. That's the comparison Pooh made when speaking on body counts. And he said it like it was a badge of honor, like it was something to flex about. The feds heard it, investigators heard it too. And now, they're reportedly revisiting every unsolved shooting, every open homicide, every cold case in Memphis where Pooh Shiesty's name has ever floated around in street conversations. Because when you willingly tell the internet that your body count rivals a rapper once facing a death penalty case, you basically hand federal prosecutors a roadmap and dare them to start digging. And then, just 6 weeks later, this same man allegedly ended up inside a Dallas recording studio with an AK-style pistol pointed at Gucci Mane while wearing a federal ankle monitor and supposedly being on home confinement. The same rapper who spent years talking about catching bodies, sliding on ops, and firing 762 rounds was allegedly living every bar he ever recorded in real time, all while the government's own GPS tracker documented every move. Y'all really gotta hear this whole story. Because what the feds are building inside that Dallas courtroom right now allegedly goes way beyond a kidnapping case. Prosecutors appear to be painting a full picture of who Lontrell Williams Jr. really is. And according to reports, they're using his own music, his Instagram posts, and even his ankle monitor against him. This is the story of a man who spent his entire career telling his truth, and is now watching that same truth become the evidence threatening to bury him. To understand how this all spiraled, we gotta go way back. Not to the Gucci situation. Not to Florida. We gotta start in Memphis. Specifically, the side of Memphis tourists never see. Lontrell Donnell Williams Jr. was born on November 8, 1999. He grew up in a city where violence isn't just background noise, it's part of everyday life. Memphis has consistently ranked among the most violent cities in America per capita. Orange Mound, Binghamton, South Memphis. These aren't just neighborhoods. They're environments where survival comes with a completely different set of rules than what most people understand. And Pooh Shiesty didn't grow up near that lifestyle. He grew up fully inside it. His rap name wasn't cooked up by some label executive either. His late brother gave it to him. He took Lontrell's childhood nickname, Mr. Pooh, and added Shiesty. Shiesty as in grimy, dangerous, hard to trust if you're an enemy. The type who moves quietly and strikes unexpectedly. His own brother saw what kind of person he was becoming and named him accordingly. That alone tells you a lot about the environment shaping this man. By 18, Pooh started channeling that reality into music. His debut single, Hell Night, alongside Big 30, dropped in March 2019, and it didn't sound like some kid chasing rap fame. It sounded like raw footage from a war zone. Then came Choppa Talk, Shiesty Summer. Track after track painting vivid, detailed pictures of life in the Memphis trenches. Not glamorized, not overly exaggerated. More like street journalism over hard 808s. In 2020, Gucci Mane, a rapper famous for signing artists with undeniable street credibility, heard something in Pooh Shiesty and brought him to 1,017 records. And no cap, that cosign meant everything. Gucci doesn't just sign rappers. Gucci signs people who remind him of himself back in 2005. Raw, reckless, authentic, and unfiltered. The moment Gucci stamped Pooh, the culture basically accepted this wasn't entertainment. This was real life. Then, Back in Blood with Lil Durk dropped in November 2020 and exploded into the Billboard Hot 100 Top 15. The video paid tribute to King Von, who had been killed in Atlanta only weeks earlier. A rapper known for being painfully specific in his street storytelling. Pooh honoring Von wasn't just about mourning somebody. It symbolized two different cities, Chicago and Memphis, connected through a shared understanding of real street violence. And when his debut mixtape Shiesty Season dropped in early 2021 and debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, the industry got the message loud and clear. This wasn't somebody people wanted to play with. But here's what the celebration ignored. The same level of detail that made his music hit so hard, the same first-person descriptions of violence that made his bars feel authentic, also allegedly created a massive federal liability with every verse he released. Now here's where things get crazy, gang. And I need y'all to really process this, because a lot of people brush past it like it wasn't one of the wildest public statements a rapper has made in years. In February 2026, around 6 weeks before the FBI allegedly raided his home, Pooh Shiesty went on Instagram Live and claimed that Boosie Badazz might be the only rapper alive with more bodies than him. Read that again carefully. He didn't say Boosie had more money, more plaques, more records, or more shows. He said more bodies. He publicly turned it into a competition and basically placed himself near the top of the entire rap industry when it came to alleged kills. Now, for people unfamiliar with the reference, Boosie Badazz out of Baton Rouge was hit with a first-degree murder charge back in 2009. Louisiana prosecutors didn't just charge him either. They reportedly pursued the death penalty, accusing him of ordering the murder of Terry Boyd. Witnesses testified. The state built a case intending to execute Torrance Hatch. Boosie eventually beat those charges, but that's not even the point here. The point is the specific name Pooh Shiesty chose to mention. He didn't randomly pick a rapper. He picked arguably the most publicly connected murder case in hip-hop history, then basically implied he might have even more bodies. Boosie later tried to clean things up. He claimed Pooh was talking about women, not actual killings. Like bodies meant girls he'd been with, not people allegedly put in the ground. And honestly, you can understand why Boosie tried to spin it that way. He's experienced enough to know the feds watch social media closely. He's been through the system already. He was trying to throw water on a fire before it spread out of control. But by then, the clip was already viral. Investigators already had it saved. And federal prosecutors don't need Boosie explaining what Pooh meant. They've got analysts, investigators, and reportedly entire files connected to unsolved homicides in Memphis. But what makes this even crazier is that the Instagram Live wasn't some isolated moment. It matched almost everything Pooh Shiesty had allegedly been rapping about for years. This isn't one careless comment. This is a pattern woven through his entire catalog. And when prosecutors examine lyrics, they don't always view them as art or entertainment. They sometimes look at them as evidence of mindset, intent, and behavior. And according to critics, the picture being built around Pooh Shiesty is disturbing. Take his collaboration with Duty Low. The chorus openly references catching bodies and sliding through neighborhoods. His verse mentions 762 rounds and hitting everybody. But one line especially stands out. I am innocent, Your Honor. Think about that for a second. I am innocent, Your Honor. Almost like he was already imagining himself standing before a judge someday rehearsing his defense. That doesn't look random to some people. It looks like subconscious documentation. Back in Blood painted retaliation as murder answering murder. Tracks like Hell Night and Shiesty Summer describe street violence in Memphis with such detailed specificity that investigators could allegedly use them to build timelines. And throughout all of it, the focus rarely stayed on money or fame. The recurring subject was violence in the first person. Not, they did it. More like, I did it. Federal prosecutors have used rap lyrics in court since the early 2000s. Courts have repeatedly ruled that lyrics can potentially demonstrate motive intent or patterns of behavior. And Pooh Shiesty's music isn't vague. It's detailed, direct, and consistent with the kind of behavioral profile the government allegedly believes they're building right now. But according to prosecutors, the lyrics are only part of the story. The real evidence, the kind that wins federal cases, allegedly came next. Picture this, fam. January 10th, 2026. Friday night in Dallas. 3 people connected to the music industry traveled to a recording studio expecting a business meeting. They believe they're there to discuss Pooh Shiesty's contract situation with Gucci Mane's 1017 label. There had reportedly been tension around the deal for a while. In 2024, Gucci supposedly released most artists from the label except Pooh Shiesty and Fujiano. According to reports, things had deteriorated so badly that Pooh allegedly wanted out completely, and somebody arranged a meeting to settle everything.
And as described further in the complaint, within hours of leaving the Dallas studio, a number of the defendants were on social media displaying some of the items that appeared to be the jewelry that had been robbed from the victims.
The prosecutors claim what those 3 people walked into wasn't a meeting at all. They say it was a planned armed setup allegedly orchestrated by Lontrell Williams Jr. himself. Here's how the feds describe it. Pooh Shiesty, who had only been out of prison for 3 months after serving time for a previous Florida gun case, allegedly arranged the Dallas studio meetup personally. But weeks before it happened, prosecutors claim he and 8 co-defendants were already planning everything. His father, Lontrell Williams Sr., allegedly rented a vehicle. Investigators say that vehicle transported members of the group from Memphis to Dallas, a trip allegedly tracked through cell phone records and license plate readers across multiple states. Then days before the meeting, several suspects allegedly visited a Staples store near the studio. Prosecutors claim they printed documents tied to the contract termination scheme, paperwork that would later allegedly be forced onto Gucci Mane at gunpoint. The defense says they were just printing lyrics. The government says it was preparation for a robbery. Decide for yourself which version sounds more believable. On the night of January 10th, once the 3 victims arrived believing they were attending a legit business meeting, prosecutors say the entire plan unfolded. Pooh Shiesty allegedly pulled out an AK-style pistol, the same type of weapon he constantly references in music. The same 762 flame he raps about, and pointed it directly at one victim. Prosecutors claim he demanded Gucci Mane sign the termination paperwork while staring down the barrel of that weapon. Meanwhile, the rest of the group allegedly handled the rest. One victim was reportedly choked, nearly unconscious. Big 30 Pooh's longtime collaborator and friend since 2019 allegedly used his body to block the studio door so nobody could escape. One by one, prosecutors say the victims were robbed. Rolexes, diamond chains, cash, expensive jewelry. By the end of it, the alleged stolen property reportedly totaled around $450,000. Gucci Mane alone allegedly lost a $250,000 watch and another $200,000 worth of diamond earrings. And somehow the story gets even crazier. According to investigators, some members of the crew allegedly returned to their hotel afterward and started posting the stolen jewelry all over social media. But here's the part of this whole story that should honestly leave you speechless. The entire time this was allegedly going down the planning, the drive from Memphis to Dallas, the alleged robbery setup, and then the ride back, Pooh Shiesty had a federal ankle monitor strapped to his leg. A government tracking device. A device specifically designed to monitor his exact movements in real time and make sure he stayed compliant with the conditions of his home confinement. That ankle monitor allegedly placed him at the studio. It placed him away from where he was legally supposed to be. It created a time-stamped GPS trail of every alleged violation that happened that night. The same device the federal court gave him as part of his supervised release reportedly became the most damaging piece of evidence prosecutors had in the entire case. He basically got caught by his own tether. U.S. Attorney Ryan Raybould stood at a podium in Dallas on April 2, 2026 and made it crystal clear. For anyone thinking violence and intimidation can be used as business tactics, I'm here to tell you it will be aggressively investigated and prosecuted. That statement wasn't really for the public. That was a warning shot to every rapper out here believing the street staying silent means the feds won't know. The feds always know. And when you're allegedly committing crimes while wearing their tracking device, they know before you even make it back to Memphis. Now, here's where people started connecting dots that most folks still haven't fully processed. Because the DOJ's case presented on April 2nd wasn't based on one witness or one statement. It wasn't a simple he said, she said situation. Prosecutors allegedly had 7 separate categories of evidence all pointing at the same crew, and every trail somehow circles back to Pooh Shiesty. Defense attorney Bradford Cohen argued that the FBI taking 3 months to make arrests showed weakness in the case. The FBI doesn't take 3 months to arrest somebody if they fully believe everything they were told the night it happened. I think the statements that were made, what allegedly was witnessed and what allegedly wasn't witnessed, gave the FBI major pause. The FBI doesn't take 3 months to arrest someone if they believe everything that was said on the night that it occurred, Cohen said publicly. That's a smart legal angle, but here's the part nobody else is saying. The FBI doesn't take 3 months when they're simply trying to arrest somebody. They take 3 months when they're trying to completely bury somebody. When they're pulling every thread possible, cross-checking databases, and building a case with 0 cracks before trial even starts, let's break down exactly what they allegedly built. 1. The ankle monitor data. Time-stamped GPS records tracking Pooh Shiesty's movements on January 10, 2026. The device allegedly placed him at the studio. It showed him leaving the boundaries of his approved residence. Every second of that night reportedly documented with government-level precision. 2 cell phone records. The phones connected to all 9 defendants allegedly placed them in the same areas at the same times. Memphis departure, highway travel, Dallas arrival, the studio location, even the hotel several defendants allegedly stayed at afterward. Cell towers don't lie, and they definitely don't forget. 3 license plate readers. The vehicle allegedly rented by Pooh Shiesty's father was reportedly captured by automated plate readers on the drive from Memphis to Dallas and around the studio area itself. Texas has a massive network of these readers spread across highways and cities. Prosecutors essentially had the car's route photographed from beginning to end. 4 surveillance footage. Cameras at the studio allegedly captured the group. Cameras at the nearby hotel allegedly captured the group. And cameras at the Staples store, where defendants allegedly printed contract termination paperwork, reportedly captured them too. Prosecutors allegedly built a visual timeline of the crew's movements from the moment they entered Dallas until the moment they left. 5 latent fingerprints. 2 defendants allegedly had fingerprints recovered from the scene that were matched using FBI databases. Physical evidence tying specific individuals directly to the alleged crime scene. 6 social media posts. After the alleged robbery, several members of the crew allegedly posted photos on social media flashing what investigators believed was the stolen jewelry. Imagine allegedly robbing somebody for a $250,000 watch and then posting it on Instagram. This sounds unreal, but investigators reportedly documented every single post, saved every screenshot, and matched the jewelry shown online to the descriptions provided by the victims. 7 Greyhound bus records. Multiple co-defendants allegedly caught a Greyhound bus from Dallas back to Memphis the morning after the robbery. Public transportation tied to real names and ticket records. The government could allegedly trace exactly who boarded that bus and when. Now, here's where the murder angle starts creeping fully into this situation. During detention hearings, the FBI acknowledged they had not yet formally interviewed Gucci Mane or the other victims directly. At that point, investigators were relying on the statements originally given to Dallas police the night everything allegedly happened. Cohen tried to frame that as weakness. But what he didn't publicly address is what investigators were allegedly doing behind the scenes alongside the kidnapping case. Sources familiar with the investigation say the federal probe into Pooh Shiesty didn't simply begin and end with January 10th. Once the feds open a file on somebody, they cast an extremely wide net. When the DOJ and FBI investigate someone, they don't just focus on the event that triggered the investigation. They start looking at everything. That means Memphis. That means old cold cases. That means unsolved homicides where Pooh Shiesty's name may have surfaced in investigative reports for years. And here's the real tea. When Pooh allegedly went on Instagram claiming he might have more bodies than Boosie Badazz, that statement reportedly landed directly in federal files. Investigators used public comments to establish behavior patterns, state of mind, and possible consciousness of guilt. A man publicly claiming to be one of the biggest killers in rap, even without murder charges today, may have just pointed investigators exactly where to look. Memphis homicide files. Unsolved shootings. Cold cases where nobody ever cooperated. The feds are reportedly pulling every single file right now and running Pooh Shiesty's name through all of them. That's what this so-called new evidence really means. It's not just ankle monitor data or fingerprints from the Dallas studio. The new evidence is allegedly the full picture of a life Pooh Shiesty documented himself through his music, social media posts, interviews, and public statements, all now being cross-referenced against years of law enforcement records. April 1, 2026, FBI Memphis reportedly executed search and arrest warrants tied to a residence connected to Pooh Shiesty's family.
Breaking news, your news leader is following now. We're learning more about an FBI search party at a home associated with Memphis rapper Pooh Shiesty.
Now take a look. This was the scene earlier this morning outside of a Cordova home belonging to Lontrell D. Williams, otherwise known as Pooh Shiesty's birth name. Now, the house deed didn't specify whether the homeowner is Pooh Shiesty or his father, Lontrell Williams Sr.
Pooh Shiesty-born Lontrell Williams Jr. was taken into custody that same day. At the very same time, raids were happening across multiple cities. Memphis, Nashville, Dallas, and eventually Atlanta, where the final defendant, Terrence Rogers, was arrested by the FBI. 9 arrests total. All 9 defendants hit with kidnapping and conspiracy to commit kidnapping charges. Maximum sentence if convicted: life in federal prison. On April 8th, Pooh Shiesty appeared before U.S. Magistrate Judge Renee Harris Tolliver in Dallas. And the judge said something that should make anybody paying attention pause. "I find that the weight of the evidence against you is strong." She pointed to his criminal history. She pointed to the alleged violation of his home confinement. She pointed to the serious sentence he'd face if convicted. Bond denied. No release conditions were even offered because the court determined there were no conditions left that he allegedly hadn't already violated. The ruling was direct. By clear and convincing evidence, no combination of conditions could guarantee community safety. And by a preponderance of evidence, no conditions could guarantee he'd appear for trial. The government met both standards, and the judge ruled accordingly. On April 17th, Pooh Shiesty was transferred to Kaufman County Detention Center about 30 miles southeast of Dallas, where he remains housed through the U.S. Marshals Service. His father was initially released on house arrest in Memphis before later being transferred back to Texas and taken into custody again. Big 30, same situation. All 9 defendants are currently sitting in federal custody awaiting trial. And then, because this story somehow couldn't get any crazier, Gucci Mane dropped a diss track. He called it Crash Dummy, and the internet instantly exploded. In the song, Gucci directly taunted Pooh Shiesty. He rapped about how after everything that allegedly happened, the guns, the robbery, the kidnapping accusations, Pooh was still technically signed to 1017 records. Tell the truth, you went out like a real crash dummy, Gucci rapped. He brought up family. He referenced the fallout. He turned the whole situation into something cinematic. The culture's reaction was divided, but the loudest and probably most important response came from Boosie Badazz. Boosie wasn't angry at Pooh. He was angry at Gucci. Because in street culture, what Gucci allegedly did, filing a police report, cooperating with authorities, and then dropping a diss track afterward, is viewed by many as crossing every possible line. Boosie hopped on stream and said it directly. Getting robbed by your artist, filing a police report, then dissing them afterward for robbing you? This is crazy. Now, I'm not here to debate whether Boosie's take is morally right or wrong. What matters is understanding what that reaction means inside the culture itself. Because that context matters if you really want to understand why this whole case has the culture so divided. The street code says you handle your business yourself. You don't go running to law enforcement. And you definitely don't make a song about it afterward. Whether people agree with that mindset or not, that's still the code. And Gucci Mane, a man who built his reputation on representing that exact lifestyle, allegedly violated every piece of it. That's why Boosie Badazz, who openly respects Gucci as an OG, couldn't stay silent on the situation. But here's the part. Boosie and everybody defending Pooh on street code grounds keeps skipping over. Pooh Shiesty is facing life in federal prison. The rap code, the street code, the culture's opinion on Gucci's behavior, none of that means anything when you're sitting in Kaufman County Detention Center waiting on a federal trial. Street principles don't erase a life sentence. Loyalty doesn't override ankle monitor GPS records. And Pooh Shiesty, the same man who rapped, "I am innocent, Your Honor," like it was a courtroom rehearsal, eventually stood in front of a real federal judge and pleaded not guilty to every charge. His attorney Kent Schaefer confirmed the arraignment. The defense plans to challenge the evidence, question the 3-month delay in arrests, and attack the credibility of government witnesses. But they're going into that fight against ankle monitor, data, cell phone records, license plate readers, surveillance footage, fingerprints, and social media posts. That's not just a he said, she said situation. That's a mountain of evidence. Y'all really need to zoom out for a second and look at what this story actually represents, because there's a bigger lesson in Pooh Shiesty's situation than just another rapper catching legal problems. Lantrell Williams Jr. was only 26 years old when this federal case landed on him. 26. He had a top 15 Billboard hit. His debut mixtape entered at number 3 on the Billboard 200. He had 61 million YouTube views on FTO. His comeback single dropped only weeks after getting released from prison in October 2025, proving that even after spending 3 years locked up, fans still hadn't abandoned him. He had everything lined up for a legitimate rap career. A real second chapter. A redemption story people genuinely wanted to support. And then, 6 months after getting out, he allegedly walked into a Dallas recording studio carrying an AK-style pistol. This isn't a story about the music industry failing Pooh Shiesty. This isn't a story about bad luck conspiracies or some setup. This is a story about a man who allegedly never separated himself from the life he rapped about, and who kept choosing that life repeatedly, even as the consequences got more serious every single time. His first federal case, the 2021 Florida incident, was partly built using his own Instagram posts. Investigators reportedly matched the serial number from a $100 bill he posted online to money recovered from the scene of an alleged robbery. They allegedly identified the McLaren vehicle he was driving through posts where he showed it off online. He basically handed investigators evidence himself. That situation cost him 3 years of freedom. He got released. He dropped new music. The streets celebrated. And then, with a federal ankle monitor still attached to his leg, he allegedly jumped right back into the same cycle. Bigger stakes, more co-defendants, and now a federal kidnapping case instead of robbery and firearms charges. And once again, the same habit of self-documentation that hurt him in 2021 allegedly came back around. Social media posts, allegedly showing stolen jewelry. The Instagram Live where he claimed more bodies than Boosie Badazz. A public trail created by somebody who seemingly couldn't stop telling the world exactly who he was. Here's the real tea about what the feds are allegedly building. This investigation isn't just about January 10th, 2026. Federal cases have a habit of expanding fast. Once the DOJ starts digging into somebody's background, they don't stop at one incident. They go back years. Investigators are reportedly in Memphis right now, talking to people, reviewing old files, revisiting unsolved homicide cases, and looking for any thread that might connect back to Lantrell Williams Jr. The bodies comment he allegedly made on Instagram, whether literal or metaphorical, may have pointed investigators directly toward those threads and gave them a reason to keep pulling. And that's the part of this story the culture doesn't really want to say out loud. If the murder rumors are true, if there are unsolved Memphis homicides tied back to Pooh Shiesty, then the Dallas kidnapping case may not even be the worst-case scenario for him. The worst-case scenario is the federal investigation continuing to grow until the next indictment no longer says kidnapping. It says murder. No cap. Federal conviction rates sit above 90%. The DOJ usually doesn't bring cases they think they'll lose. They're not rolling dice with this indictment. And when a federal judge looks a 6-year-old man in the eye and says, "The weight of the evidence against you is strong," while denying bond, the judge has already reviewed the file. That judge knows exactly what investigators are working with. Pooh Shiesty is currently sitting inside Kaufman County Detention Center, roughly 30 miles outside Dallas. No trial date, no bond. His father remains in custody. Big 30 remains in custody. 7 additional co-defendants remain in custody. And the case is still in its early stages, which means investigators are likely still building, still interviewing, and still digging through every connection tied to this man's past. Hip-hop culture loves debating who's authentic and who's pretending, and in that conversation, Pooh Shiesty usually wins. Very few people in rap question whether his street credibility is real. The streets embraced him almost immediately, but authenticity comes with a cost people rarely mention while celebrating it. The same real-life experiences that make the music feel authentic, the same raw first-person details that hit so hard in every verse, are the same details federal prosecutors later organize into evidence folders for juries to hear. He once rapped, "I am innocent, Your Honor," on a song. Now he's standing before an actual federal judge saying those exact same words, except this time there's no beat behind it. No ad-libs. No chorus from Big 30 in the background. This time, it's just Lantrell Williams Jr., a federal indictment and the massive amount of evidence prosecutors allegedly spent 3 months putting together before they ever placed cuffs on him. He spent years rapping about catching bodies. He allegedly claimed more bodies than Boosie Badazz on Instagram. And now, the feds have basically responded with, "We heard everything you said. We took it seriously. And now you're going to answer for it in court." The question was never whether Pooh Shiesty is real. The real question is whether real can survive what the federal government just placed in front of him. And based on everything publicly known right now, the ankle monitor data, the fingerprints, the phone records, the surveillance footage, the social media posts, and the murder allegations floating in the background of this entire case, that answer is not looking very good for Lantrell Williams Jr.